Welcome to Leaving Nothing to Chance, your go-to podcast where we bring you insights from some of the most influential voices in small business and personal development. Each week, we dive deep into conversations with top thought leaders, authors, and business moguls from around the world, sharing their secrets to success and strategies for growth. Tune in for exclusive content that will inspire, motivate, and equip you to take your journey to the next level. This is Leaving Nothing to Chance.
Welcome, everybody, to another exciting episode on Leave Nothing to Chance, or John Solider, or whatever you want to get to our show on. If you're here, you figured out how to get here, so thank you for doing that. We got a great guest today, Mr. Logan Summit. How are you, sir?
I am absolutely fantastic, John, but I wake up like that. That's how I get up in the morning. Oh, 110%. That's how we roll. This is how we do. How are you doing?
Yeah, I tell you what, I was awake before, but now I'm really awake. That is a great introduction. And I know you've been in sportscasting before. You've worked with ESPN. You've worked with athletes. You've worked with all sorts of celebs. And tell us a little bit about yourself.
I got into radio back in the day when I was a teenager with just a little bit of gold in a pager. When you used to read Word Up magazine with Salt and Pepper Heavy D up in the limousine. Yeah, I was on this thing called radio. John, I know you know what I'm talking about because I see a little bit of gray around the edges there. But for the kids at home who don't know what a radio is, it's the thing in your car that you don't use anymore, okay? Yeah, that thing. I started in rock radio on that, and I was given an opportunity to do some producing at ESPN. And then they said, hey, would you like to do some live sports updates? Can you write? And I said, my English teachers don't think so, but I think I'm pretty good at writing. I started doing live sports updates, became known as the funny guy doing live sports updates. And then I was given an opportunity by Jason Jackson to be a part of the Jack Show, which was his incarnation. He wanted to step away from NBA Tonight and Sports Center and do something more centric around him and his personality. And so he created the Jack Show. And I was in a room with three dudes. And the other two dudes in this room, they knew everything about sports, everything. They could tell you what Mike Schmidt had for breakfast on July 19th, 1984. I'm not like that. I'm old. I don't know any of that stuff. I'm here for personality. Do I love sports? Of course I do. Who doesn't like sports? Most of us do, except for the kids these days. They like Minecraft and Roblox, but most of us like sports. So I looked at these two dudes, and it got to me, John, and we were asked to say our name and why we should be on the show. And these two guys were spurting off all this rigmarole, all this goo, if you will. And I got to me and I said, my name's Summit, and I'm prettier than these two mother. And that's how I got the job. It could have been my walking papers. They could have sent me walking. But Jason looked at me, he looked at the other two, and he goes, you two can leave. And that's how I started at ESPN. Steve Levy loves that story because literally he said, you almost were out the door before your butt was even in it. And you know what? It's important to go all in on yourself at all times, because if you don't believe in yourself, no one else will. And I decided to go all in. A lot of the time in my life, I have decided to go all in on myself, and it has brought me to this point in my career, and I think that's pretty good. I've been able to make the transition from traditional sports over to eSports and brand marketing and all this content creating nonsense, all this stuff that none of us old guys know anything about. I've been able to transfer over into that space, and now I do sports, eSports broadcasting. I also have a podcast with Millions.co. I'm a partner over there, and we interview athletes, we interview celebrities, we interview pop culture enthusiasts, and we interview entrepreneurs, because everybody has a story, and it's your story to tell. Some of us just tell it a little bit better than others.
I can see that. And I can tell you're a shy guy.
Yep, very shy.
How'd you overcome your shyness?
It was very simple. I pooped on my mom's best friend's carpet when I was 3, and they made a big deal out of it. And you know what? I'll never be shy again.
So now you made the transition, also another transition 3 years ago, from Northeast Connecticut, ESPN country, down to the desert down there in Vegas. And tell us about that.
I've moved a lot for radio and TV over the years. I've been in upstate New York. I've been down in Miami. I've been in Texas. I've been in California. I've been all over. So moving is kind of part of the gig, all right? But I'm sitting in Connecticut. I'm not going back to the worldwide leader, because guess what? They don't treat their employees very well. But I didn't say that, ABC, Disney. Shh. And I was in Connecticut and I was looking around at the eSports scene because a lot of my friends who are in radio and TV said there's this thing called Twitch that you should get on. And I said, I don't want to be a streamer. That's not what I do. I'm good at video games for my age, but that's not what I do. But when I turned on Twitch, I saw talking heads. I saw people engaging each other. And I thought, hold on, that's exactly what I do. So I started streaming, and basically about a year after that, I was given my first opportunity to do an esports gig. I crushed it on 3 days' notice, had never heard of the game before, but was given an opportunity. And you never say no to opportunity. You say yes, and then you figure it out later if you need to, okay? Figure it out later, but never say no to opportunity because you got to believe in yourself that you can cross that finish line going full bore. And you know what? If you got to learn some things along the way, oh, boo-hoo, you're going to be a better person for it. So I was thinking, all right, I'm either moving to LA, Las Vegas, or Barbados, because I'm going to go stalk Rihanna down there. But Barbados, unfortunately, wouldn't give me a visa, and LA is just traffic and bills. So I moved to Viva Las Vegas. And here I am 3 years later, and it's been the best move of my life. There's so much opportunity here. It is going to be the next Hollywood because all you need for Hollywood is warehouse space. I don't know if anybody knows this out there, but what Hollywood is warehouse space. That's all it is. And guess what we got out here? A lot of desert. And guess what you can put up in the desert? A bunch of warehouses. So we will be the next Hollywood, mark my words. It'll be about 10 years before it completely overtakes. But Hollywood, especially with these tariffs, oh, Detroit is laughing at you right now. That's right. The good folks over at Detroit, Eminem and everybody on the 8 Mile are laughing because guess what? You're going to be Flint, Michigan before you know what hits you.
Never say no to opportunity. Let's talk about that because that's terrific advice. And for all of our listeners, because sometimes we're scared, we're intimidated. We don't want to pick up and move, for example, geographically. Mm-hmm. We don't want to move company to company, business to business. We don't believe in ourselves enough to do that. So how did you get that self-development confidence to say, okay, hey, ESPN, great thing to brag about. Okay, by the way, you're my second ESPN broadcaster I've interviewed.
Who was your first?
Oh, man, Simon Chan, who used to work for ESPN, NBA, stuff in New York because he's an American guy, but he speaks Mandarin.
Oh, okay.
When Yao Ming was playing, the other Chinese athletes that came over, played the NBA, he was a kid that he's a New York kid, went to Columbia, smart guy.
Yeah, good school.
And Simon, I don't know if you cross paths with Simon or not, but he's not in California now. He's raising his kids, they're ball players. But
that's great.
But to that point, hey, ESPN, wow, what a great address. A lot of prestige, a lot to go with that. But at the end of the day, it's right for some people. Obviously, it's right for Mike Greenberg, but it wasn't right for Mike that played at Notre Dame, whose last name I'm forgetting right now. Big Mike. Oh boy, you know who I mean.
Yeah, but I'm letting you go.
Yeah, played in the NFL, wrestled
at
Notre Dame when wrestling still.
Last name begins with a G. I'll give you a hint.
Oh my God! You know it's funny. My buddy Tim Huffman played with him in college. Anyway, all right, that's a 64-year-old moment for you there, Logan.
Hey, it happens. Look, I got 46-year-old moments all day long. We can compare notes later.
I'm having more of those 64-year-old moments sometimes. That's just names. I can see the guy in front of me.
Oh yeah.
That was last night.
Hey, I walk into a room constantly going, why am I here?
Yeah.
What am I supposed to be doing right now?
What's my wife's name? No, that's not quite that. The car keys thing, that we could go on about that for hours. I don't know what I do with the car keys half the time. But you made a great statement there. And I want to pick up on that because opportunity is really something that we need to hear more about and taking advantage of opportunity because so many people miss them. So what habits should people establish when they hear about an opportunity? What are the steps that they take to analyze and then to act on an opportunity once they decided, okay, I want to go for it?
All right, first and foremost, I want to address something that you said earlier, and I want everybody to understand. We all have the same hangups and anxiety. We all feel that heaviness weighing on our shoulders. And all of us, when we make heavy decisions in life, yes, they are heavy, and we all feel the same things. Look, feelings are pretty relative about that stuff, all right? So we're all feeling wow, can I do this? How do I do this? What are the steps that I take? Will I be successful? All right. Dana White said the other day, he said, if you never take a chance on yourself, you will never truly know how successful you can be. And that is very truthful. Look, we all have to look at our situation. And if our situation is plateaued and there is no room for an improvement, then what are you doing? That's why people go through midlife crises, because they didn't do the things that they wanted to truly accomplish. And probably because they felt like they were stuck. And you're not stuck. You may feel like you're stuck, but you're not. And I'll tell you why. Because every person has the opportunity in their life to do whatever they want. This is your movie. It's no one else's. If you got kids, you got a wife. Look, the Colonel started Kentucky Fried Chicken at 63 years old. Rodney Dangerfield and Anthony Hopkins became famous actors at 41 years old. Okay? There is tons of time to do all of the things that you want to do. You just have to be willing to take the first step. And most people are happy with the day in, day out of their lives. Even if they say they're unhappy to their friends, they're not willing to take the chance on themselves. And I understand that. It's not for everybody. But if you want to grasp life by the cojones, you got to get right in there and be willing to go all in on yourself multiple times, because there are going to be times in your life. Look, not everybody's Justin Bieber and gets picked up off of YouTube, and the next thing you know, you got $300 million to your name, okay? That's not going to happen. There's going to be plenty of opportunities that you're going to have to take. Some of them are going to work out for you. Some of them will be learning experiences for you. But ultimately, they will all build the pyramid that will be your success.
Great answer. Great answer. Let's talk about something else, because habits are important in business and in life, obviously. What habits should people break? You know, what are some of those things that they need to get rid of? Some of those chains maybe that they need to get rid of so that they can do as you just said and move forward aggressively and productively.
I'm going to answer that question with a story, okay? At 46 years old, being a broadcaster since I was 19 years old, being at the Worldwide Leader, look, I have had mentors like Stuart Scott, John Butchergross, Jason Jackson, Ian Page, Steve Levy. I've had a lot of people around me give me great advice and help me grow as a broadcaster. But even then, when I moved to Vegas, when I first got here, I went to my first CES, and I had never been to a convention as a talent. I was being paid by the good folks over at Roland. Thank you for having me. And we were there, and I met up with a bunch of young creators. They were like 22 years old, and they were all successful in what they do. And I had never been in a position where I had to elevator pitch myself. And that's exactly what CES is when you walk into a booth. Usually when I would come into a room, it was just to wrap up a sale. They wanted to meet, the client wants to meet me, blah, 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 stuff like that. So I walk into a booth and I don't really know what I'm doing, and I don't knock it out of the park. And a young content creator by the name of Merc Anthony, he's the orange guy. He was on Beast Games. He has his own G Fuel flavor in stores called Cranthony. Go check it out. He looks at me and he goes, look, man, you're not doing that right. He goes, I need you to say, hi, I'm Logan Summit, formerly of ESPN. That's the first thing out of your mouth, because then you've got 2 to 5 minutes to say whatever the heck you want, and they will be listening because of those 4 simple letters. And we went into the next booth, and I immediately put that into action and used it successfully. We got out of the booth, and the kid looks at me and goes, really? And I'm like, yeah. And he's, hold on, you've been doing this forever, and you took my advice at 22 years old, and you're however old I was at the time. And I go, yeah, it doesn't matter who gives you the advice. If a goat on fire can talk to you and gives you good advice, you're stupid not to take it. You have to be willing to get out of your own way and take great advice to be able to move on. You will never truly be able to grow if you can't take other people's advice and be able to incorporate it into what you do and your system. That is the best way I can answer it. Get out of your own way and be willing to take on new objectives and new perspectives.
Love it. Love it. Great, great answer. So let's talk a little bit about esports. Don't know a lot about them as an old guy, because I'm a traditional guy. I was an athlete, and then I watched other athletes, and I still watch a little bit. I don't want, I'd be honest with you, I don't even watch as much as I used to. At one time, I used to be tied to the TV, but I realized there's too many other things in life. But I am a religious follower of that former employer of yours. I got it on my phone, and I got to know. I woke up at 2 o'clock this morning, let my dogs out. I had to know whether Edmonton won or lost last night against Vegas because the game's
Yep.
so darn late.
Yeah, they won again, by the way.
And they're playing really well. I think they're going to win the cup.
They are. Their goalie is on top of their game right now, and that's what's really holding us back. Is we put some work in, but they're doing better. Edmonton is the better team right now, especially stealing 2 games at home here in Vegas.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You know what? I don't think I was talking to my dentist of all people yesterday about watching how McDavid skates around NHL big boy defensemen like he did in that LA series. That guy, he's at a different level. I've never seen anybody skate like that. But anyway, but so let's talk about esports, though, because I see a lot of it. It's a trend. I've got a 21-year-old son.
It's not a trend. It's not a trend. It's a $30 billion a year business.
Tell us about it, because I honestly don't know enough about it to be dangerous.
Well, it's a $30 billion a year business. It's folks getting together and playing video games and keeping score. At the heart of it, it's just sports. Drop the E off of it and insert video games. Yeah. That's all. I think you're giving it a little bit too much. Like, I don't understand esports just because it's called esports. Drop the E off of it. It's exactly what it sounds like, except instead of playing football on the field, they're playing football on the TV. That's all.
Interesting. I see it as an entire, I don't know what day of the week. I think it's on Saturday. It's on all day, literally on one of the ESPN channels.
Think about it the world takes it very seriously. This is how serious China takes esports. They have you can only play for so many hours a week or practice so many hours a week. I think it was 2 or 3 months ago now, they killed 12 teenagers for playing video games longer than they were supposed to for that week. Yeah, they take it pretty seriously around the world.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty serious, to say the least. Do you see it as something, though, that okay, obviously it's growing, obviously
it's not going anywhere. All right, so recently esports was overevaluated, and just like any stock that's overevaluated, there comes a time where it has to regulate itself and come back to ground zero and come back to the earth, and that's what's happening right now. And what we're finding out is a lot of these companies that were overvaluated were just that, and those are going away. And now business people are focused on actually making plans that work. Before it was just, throw money at esports. It's happening. It's not going anywhere. It will only continue to grow, and it continues to grow. As people say, esports is dead. Esports continues to grow. With or without you, it's going to be there because kids these days don't play sports. Look, football, I talked to Tiki Barber about this. Football will probably be gone in the way that we play or see football now, will probably be gone in about 25 years. And it'll start slowly because it will start at the Pop Warner level. Parents are going to stop putting their kids in Pop Warner, and thus they won't have an opportunity to play football maybe until they get to high school. And at that point, maybe they're better at soccer or baseball or basketball, and they're not willing to take that chance on playing a new sport. So it will dwindle down the prospects. And at some point, what the NFL will end up being is a flag football league in some sort of fashion.
Interesting. And I've heard a lot of guys say that between the TBI issue, obviously being a huge issue of the concern for the player athlete. But I agree with you. I think kids are playing less and less. I think my son was a hockey player. Most of his friends were hockey players, but the ones that weren't hockey players never played sports, period. They didn't play football. They just opted. Some of them played for fun, flag football and stuff like that, but they never really engaged in it. It seems like you're not hearing as many kids getting ready for the season the way that they did when we were young, but when I was young anyway. But so esports is here to stay.
Yeah.
Where does it go next? Where does it evolve to next, in your opinion?
It already is evolving, and what it is, it's incorporating lifestyle, and that's what it needs to be, because video games are part of a lifestyle component, just like sports are. And these kids, even though they may not be out there running around in the streets doing their thing, but you know what? They know what they like for their music. They know what they like for their clothes, their kicks, their shoes, their brands. And you know what? There's a lot of advertising opportunity there. So it's not going anywhere. And you have a captive audience. And these kids, you know what? Years ago, you used to say, kids don't have any money. That's not true today. Kids got cash now. And you know what? They're learning how to make money, how to spend money, how to make more money, create businesses at a young age. Look, I would hate to be a kid now because of social media. And look, at some point, somebody pooped themselves on the bus and they just had to worry about getting through to the next school. Once they got to junior high or whatever, everybody would forget that. But now that's on the internet for the rest of your life. I can't even imagine what that feels like, because high school felt like the longest, most important thing ever. And it's 4 years. As you get older, 4 years are nothing. If you are still friends with your high school friends 10 years down the road, congratulations. You're like 2% of the population. High school doesn't matter.
No, you're right. And
For grades.
one of the things that I think too, that as something that is growing in a way that is it is inclusive, because the kid that was 150 pounds in Texas was not playing high school football.
Right, exactly.
Doesn't mean he couldn't enjoy the game. He didn't follow the game. He didn't enjoy watching the game. He didn't enjoy once in a while getting out and chucking the ball around with his buddies or playing flag football or something like it, so they can participate. But then they can participate on a permanent level. And a perfect example, right? I go back to my dentist yesterday. I only see this guy once a year. And we normally talk three things: hockey, football, and if it's a political year, politics. But we're past the political year, so we stayed to hockey and football yesterday. But he himself, and he's my age, he's an old guy, but he's in 3 fantasy football leagues with his son.
Yeah. And see, so here's the thing about fantasy football. It's a necessary evil in sports. It's done great things for sports, but primarily sports betting. Let's be honest with ourselves, okay? And the thing that I hate about fantasy football is it takes the team aspect out of it. You're never now cheering for an entire team anymore. You may have your team that you like, but guess what? You still want Devontae Adams to get a bunch of points on your team, on your fantasy team. So intrinsically, you're not just I'm Giants all the way anymore. There's not that. Now we're split up into who you got on your fantasy team this year. Because guess what? You're a fan of them for that season, or until you trade them. You are a huge fan of them. You might even be calling them out on Twitter. And that's right, I'm not calling it X. Because no one calls, have you X today? No one says that. They said, did you tweet today? No one says that, okay? But seriously, you become a fan of individual players, and that's good overall for jersey sales and things of that nature. But as far as the way that we grew up watching team sports, primarily football, I think it's taken away from that I love my team aspect of it.
And I think you're making a great point, because this guy's a Cowboys guy, born and raised here in Texas. And yet he said he had Barkley on his fantasy team, so he had to root for Barkley all season.
See?
Cowboys fans, for those of us that aren't big football fans, okay, if you're not a big football fan, if you're a Cowboys fan, you hate the Eagles. If you're an Eagles fan, you hate the Cowboys. It's just in your DNA. Okay. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about fantasy football, if you got a great player from that other team on your team, to Logan's point, you got to root for that guy to be successful. So I love it. But I think the other thing that we're seeing too is I think that not the fantasy, but the love of sports is a permanent thing. You look at how big these leagues have become, and what I think this is doing is allowing us branding. And you just mentioned it with the jerseys, for example, right? Where all of a sudden a guy's jersey here in Dallas, a guy that plays for New England, all of a sudden his jersey is popular. Why? Because he's on your fantasy team.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a lot of Wes Welker jerseys going around that for no other apparent reason than he was a terror on the fantasy squad. That's for sure.
Yeah, he was. He's actually, you know what? He was a local boy here. He was a Texas guy. He went to Tech or A&M, I forget. But anyway.
No, that's what I'm saying is that he was playing for the Pats, but I'm sure there were a bunch of jerseys around there.
There were even jerseys for some guy named Tom Brady down here. I don't know whatever happened to that guy.
I don't know what happened to him. I think he was 26th round from Michigan or something. I don't know.
I don't know.
Maybe he'll be good someday. We'll have to watch that guy.
He can only attract good-looking women. I taste in women. I don't know. So let's go back to a couple other things, though. Okay, let's talk about it. We talked about going forward. We talked about it, establishing ideas to be successful and then going for them and running them up the flagpole. How do people, this is a question I ask a lot of entrepreneurial people like yourself, okay, is what habits should people break?
Yeah, you would ask me that, and that's what I said. You have to be willing to look opportunity in the face, take it, and get out of your own way. That's the biggest one. And also, just like we all have certain habits or things that we know that we're not good at, recognize them and surround yourself with people who have those skills, because it takes a village to do anything. You're not going to do anything on your own. You need people around you.
How do we change the obvious? How do we change the things that are obvious to other people? Give me an example. You walk into a business, and I use an example of this all the time. There's a gym in Canada when my son was playing hockey in Ontario, and we were living up there for a couple of years. And it was a gym that I really liked training at, and really hardcore. And the guy had just old school equipment and medicine balls, all kinds of stuff you don't see in a commercial gym. Anyway, I loved this guy's gym, and it was like $20 a month, and it was nothing. But he said to me one day, he goes, "What would you change in this gym to make it better?" I don't know. And I got home that night and I started to think about his question, and I started to realize he's there every single day. So he walks in that gym, he sees the same four walls, the same everything. I walk in a couple of times a week as a customer. I see some things differently that maybe he could improve. So, for example, his lockers, because of the environment up there, you lived in the Northeast. During the winter time, you get people with snow on their shoes. They stick them in a locker, it oxidizes, and the locker starts looking like it's rusty, right? So you might put your shoes in there, but if you're going to work, you're not going to put your good suit and tie, for example, in that locker, because you don't want that stuff on there. And if you're a woman, no way in the world you put your good purse or anything else in there. That's one example. So when I say about changing the obvious, how do people, when they don't see the obvious in their business or in themselves, how do they change those things, or how do they get that counsel to say, what is it that I can do differently or better to make myself a better brand like you have, okay, as a sportscaster, as an entertainer, as everything that you're involved with? How do you do that? And how do you sometimes get that information about what it is you can improve in yourself?
You're never going to be able to do it by yourself. Like I just said, you have to find the people around you to get involved. You can't do anything by yourself. No one does anything by themselves except for private times. Literally, you're not going to build anything by yourself. You need other people in place, and you need other people to be able to tell you what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. And then that goes back to my first point about you just need to be able to get out of your own way. If somebody gives you good advice, you need to be willing to take it.
And let's talk about something else. Now, in all the years you've been doing this, you're 46 now. You started, how old were you when you began your broadcasting?
19.
19, so a long time. How have you seen technology change for the better and or for the worse?
The worst part is how much we rely on technology these days. But technology has obviously changed a great deal. Everything's digital. When I first got into radio, they were just getting rid of tape and things of that nature. Luckily, I didn't have to really learn any of that stuff because it was all going to digital. And to be quite honest, most entertainment companies still use the same stuff, just updated. Parasite won an Oscar on an editing system that was over 10 years old. It's the main editing system that a lot of people use, but it wasn't an updated version. So I've been using Cool Edit Pro, which became Adobe. Adobe bought it, and now it's Adobe, whatever the heck they call it, and it's included in there. So I'm still using the same stuff. It's just got a different name on it because somebody branded it, and they've just upgraded it. I'm literally using the same things. I love the fact that I can sit and watch sports and edit videos on my phone. That's amazing. The fact that we have mini computers in our hands is good. But the bad part is in Denmark, they have installed on the streets, in the sidewalks, the lights, the traffic lights, because people always have their heads down and people are wandering into traffic. So now they don't have to look up. They have the lights on the sidewalks now.
Wow, I didn't know that. Interesting.
Yeah, but that's how involved we are with our phones. And that's not necessarily a good thing. It's very disheartening to me when I go to events and we're at like a really cool thing and everybody's sitting there doing that instead of engaging each other. So there's a little bit of that. But essentially, it's all the same stuff. It's just better. As far as the stuff that I see and I use in radio and TV, I do a broadcast each and every single week on Saturday night from the HyperX Arena in the lovely and luxurious Luxor Hotel and Casino here on the Las Vegas Strip. I do an eSports tournament every Saturday, and we have the really high-tech studios over there. It's the same stuff that I saw at ESPN, and it's all the same. It's all the same gear. It's just better. It's just better, and in a lot of ways, it's cheaper. Not for long, but it was cheaper.
It's funny. I was on an interview yesterday with a young lady in Florida, and I said, when I started my first business 42 years ago, the phone plugged into the wall. Now this thing could launch the space shuttle.
Yeah.
And where will it be in 20 years? God knows. Hopefully we'll be here to see it. Let's talk about a couple things. Let's talk about your podcast.
Yeah. What about it?
It's all about it. Where can they?
Well, like I said before, I interview sports and esports athletes, celebrities, pop culture icons, and entrepreneurs. And I let them tell their story. I'm a partner on Millions.co, which is strictly for sports. It's co-owned by Bruce Buffer and a bunch of other cats. And it's primarily, it was brought on to be a place to bring athletes to meet brands. And they have expanded into bringing creators on to do podcasts. And I was lucky enough to be one of those creators that they made a partner. And I've been there for a week, and I have done 16 interviews with different fighters. I've got 2 more today.
Interesting. A lot of UFC guys.
Just a lot of fighters.
Yep. What do you think of Bo Nichols' fight the other night?
I didn't actually get a chance to watch that fight.
Interesting fight. He's from here. He's from Allen, Texas. Heck of a collegiate wrestler. But so let's stay on podcasting, for a minute, because our mutual friend, Mr. Chris Champion, and I talk about this a lot, and he shared a number with me. I don't know if the number's accurate or not, but that back in October, when he and I first met, there were about 3.7 million English-speaking podcasts. That number is now over 4 million. Now, what's the relevance of that? I'd love your opinion on this, because obviously you got a bird's eye seat with what you're doing. When we go back to this election, Trump was on over 100 podcasts. Kamala was on 4. So do you think as we get into 2028 and beyond, that younger metric, the 40 and under person who does not watch CNN, MSNBC, or Fox, maybe they don't even watch TV at all, they're going to be getting their information from people on podcasts, and if so, to what degree?
Everybody's getting there. Look, everybody younger than 30 is getting all of their information from the internet. And I don't really want to sit here and talk about that, to be quite honest with you, because there's a lot of disinformation out there, and I don't want to be part of that.
Fair enough. I had to ask anyway. So let's have fun. Who is the most interesting person that you have ever interviewed to date?
Jimmy Carter.
Oh, okay.
Why? Because he was president.
Right.
And he was just a peanut farmer from Georgia. And he had a tough go at it during his presidency. He had that big gas depression that I don't remember because I wasn't around for it, but that definitely hurt him. And yeah, just a very nice guy. And I don't know, I haven't had an opportunity to interview very many presidents in my day. Yeah, that would be it. Or The Rock is always fun because he's a great guy. And go back with his dad's ex-WWF tag team partner, Tony Atlas, because I was a wrestling manager in high school and I used to travel with Tony and whatnot. And I used to do autograph signings at boat shows with him and things of that nature. I've known The Rock and he's a nice guy. That's always interesting. Usually the most interesting interviews are the people who know how to tell their story. You can have the greatest story in the world, but if you're not able to communicate that in an interesting and creative fashion, then it's just a good story. A great story is somebody who can captivate an audience. So the interviews that are best are usually people who are schooled in doing interviews generally. Other broadcasters are always a fun interview because you start talking shop, and we've all got crazy stories of the things that we've seen and done over the years, from the things that Charlie Steiner used to do in the bathroom between innings at Yankees games to I don't want to say who it is, but somebody getting very upset at the LeBron James draft and getting so inebriated that they lost their suit somewhere along the line.
I got to hear that story, but I got a feeling that's one for off camera, huh?
It is one for off camera, exactly. Yeah, but needless to say, that person, no matter what room I'm in, if they're in that room, they can't disregard me because I've seen you naked.
I got to get this now. They got upset because LeBron had gotten drafted. Did they not have?
They didn't get used enough during the broadcast.
Okay.
That's all I'll say.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Because I remember the first time I ever heard of him, it was ESPN was advertising the fact it was when they were showing the high school games.
Yeah, it was probably in the McDonald's All-American.
Yeah, I remember them talking about this kid that they were like, this kid's not a kid. He's like a 30-year-old man in a 16-year-old's body. And he certainly has lived up to that over the years. But just coming back to some of those stories, okay, the ones that you can tell. Okay.
The ones that I can tell. I already told you the one about how I got hired. You know what? There's a lot of really good times. I can tell you this. I was at my first, this is a good story about Stuart Scott. I'm a kid. I'm like 26 years old. And it's the first time that I am a quote unquote celebrity at a charity golf tournament. And we're at Mohegan Sun. And my girlfriend and I are checking in. And so I'm 46. This is literally 20 years ago. And as we check in, they give us our suite and then they give us $500 in cash. And I don't know exactly what the look on my face and my girlfriend's face was, but it was not a look of coolness, because I got a hand on my shoulder and a whisper in my ear. Hey, kid, act like you've been here before, for Christ's sakes. And you know what? He was absolutely right. And that night, the guys all went out gambling, and Antoine Walker lost 75 grand at the craps table with us. And the women, though, everybody, they went shopping. Now, I didn't make the kind of money that Stuart made and that his wife could spend. This is how great those people were. The wives all took their $500 that they got to check in, and they gave it to my girlfriend so that she could shop with them. It was about $4,500 20 years ago, and they went shopping. That was the camaraderie of our group at ESPN. And it was Stuart Scott, Butcher Gross, Jason Jackson, Ian Page, Michael Kim, Pat Boyle, and some other folks. And it was a really tight crew, and we used to do a lot of great stuff together. That really just stands out because everybody looked out for each other. And I really like that, because especially in a corporate world, not a lot of people look out for you. They smile at your face and they stab you in the back.
So I've got to ask this question. Mike Greenberg really live and die on the New York Jets as bad as he seems to?
Yeah, Mike's Mike.
Okay.
He does. Mike's Mike.
Yeah, sometimes I think it's the old.
Yeah, you turn it up to 11 like Spinal Tap said, because that's how high it goes. But Mike and the Mad Dog, they didn't like each other, which always, like off camera, they really didn't like each other. And that always bothered me, because it's like, really, guys, you're making so much money together. And yeah, you keep bits on air for entertainment purposes. Look, I don't know if you realize this, but yeah, even talk radio's entertainment. Anyways, but the fact that you could go to work every day and scream at somebody that you don't like and then get off camera and still not like them, but then count your bonuses checks together. At a certain point, you would think that you could come together and sing Kumbaya by the fireplace.
Yeah, laugh all the way to the bank, right?
Yeah, and Mike, I have a little issue with them, because they started look, the Jack Show is what brought sports radio to what it is. Before we got into it, it was old ex-football players posing a question, taking phone calls from the audience. That's all they did. When we got into it, we created what we called at the time a sports variety show. We were the first show to do a taped comedy bit every single day. I won a Marconi for my producing on those. We had segments. Yes, there was a call-in segment, but that was just one segment. We were the first show to ever talk about actual news every single day. We called it Issues. We had the Champ and the Chump, the best and worst from the day before. And everything was very Fox Sports. And when I say that, I mean, there was intros for everybody and everything. There were outros. When I got there at ESPN, everything was classic rock. And I said, nope. We're getting rid of that stuff. And everybody at ESPN went, no! And I went, yes, okay? I'm putting in hip hop and top 40. And they said, no, you can't. No, what are you guys doing? What is this? And then our first ratings book came back. And we raised ratings because we took over stations for other people that were fired. And we raised ratings 537%, which I didn't even think was a valid thing. How do you raise numbers that 500? Like, I was like, you got to be kidding me. And then the vice president of ESPN Radio got fired. And they brought in a young kid, a 30-year-old kid. And he got what we were doing. And now, as you see, a lot of these shows, Pat McAfee, all of this is now sports variety. It's not what we would traditionally call a sports talk show. Most people don't do that kind of show anymore. They still do. Colin Cowherd's a little bit still like that, but it's more fast-paced, more moving. We were the first show to be on the internet to be able to watch on the internet while you were listening to us. We were really trying to break some ground, and we did. And you know what? I was doing a gig down in Dallas, and I had a driver for the week. And at the time, he was bringing me to the airport, and he goes, "Hey, man, do you mind if I take a couple pictures with you?" I said, "Yeah, sure, man." And right before we get out of the car, he goes, "Hey, by the way, I just wanted to tell you, I'm from Springfield, Massachusetts." And I start laughing because we started out small on 10 markets for about 3 months until they blew us up a little bit. And one of our first markets was Springfield. And he looks at me and he goes, "I know exactly who you are. I know exactly what you did." He goes, "Do you still talk to Jason?" I go, "All the time." And he goes, "Hey, man, I don't know if you realize this or not, but thank you and thank Jason for creating sports podcasts." And I was like, holy. I called Jason before I got on the plane. I go, "Dude, this guy just said we created sports podcast." He goes, "Hot take. I guess we did." Well, yeah, we'll take that. Yeah, we'll take that. Not to the bank, but we'll take that. We helped modernize what sports talk is, and I'll always be able to have that. We still talk about it from time to time because they just didn't want to give us a raise. They didn't want to give us a raise, and they offered to fire me and split my salary amongst everybody else. And that doesn't solve a problem. That just creates a new problem. Because like Jason said, the show is the show because of all of us. You don't kill part of it and expect it to, it's not a hydra over here. It's not going to grow new heads. And it's funny too, because I was in that meeting, by the way, they acted like I wasn't even there. And we get outside of that meeting and I look at Jason, I'm like 26 or whatever. And I'm like, "Jason, thank you so much for standing up for me." He goes, "Kid, your salary doesn't split 3 ways."
That says a lot right there, right? You know.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to ask you. So, all time, you've been listening to sports your whole life, like
Yep.
who was? Let's just talk baseball because most of our listeners listen to baseball. Who was your best all time?
Bob Uecker.
Okay, okay.
Straight up Bob Uecker, one of the funniest men on the face of the planet, and off air swore like the worst sailor you've ever heard in the entire world.
Really?
Couldn't stop swearing as soon as the on-air light went off. Could not stop.
Okay. How about football?
Oh, football, John Madden all the way. Madden was a force to be reckoned with in so many different ways. And if you've ever seen the making of the John Madden video game, his love of football is what created the Madden game and what made it so great because he wouldn't allow it to not represent football adequately. The first iteration of the game they gave him was like, there were like 4 men on the offensive line. And he goes, "There's 7 men on the offensive line and we can't do that." He goes, "You better figure it out because I'm not going to put my name on something that's not representative of football." And because he was such a stickler for it, because that's all he knew. He didn't know video games, but he knew football. And he was able to just be like, "No, this has to be right." And he did that throughout almost his entire life, except for I think the last 4 or 5 years of his life. Every year he would get with the team and go over stuff. Just the attention to detail from him. And that comes from coaching. It straight up comes from coaching, that attention to detail. The funny thing about him was he always wore the same thing. I don't know if you really noticed that, but for years, he would wear the same clothes because he was that superstitious. Obviously, we all know he drove a bus. He didn't like to fly. So people would get to know him over these long bus rides. And that's how he would do business. He would bring you on the bus. And you'd go from, I don't know, Tempe to Tampa. And by the time you were there, you were best friends with him. And he was that kind of guy. But he was a no-nonsense man. And I think that really shows in everything that he did. The first sports book I ever read, my grandfather gave me. It was John Madden's 1 knee equals 2 feet. He's quite the icon. And if you're going to ask me basketball, it's got to be Johnny Most. Boston Celtics announcer for years and years. Of course, if you've ever heard, "Havlicek stole the ball, Havlicek stole the ball, Havlicek stole the ball." That's Johnny Most. When I was young enough, he was at the end of his career, and my family was good enough we went to a lot of basketball games, a lot of Celtics. I got to see a lot of Celtics Lakers as a young kid, not realizing what I was actually seeing in front of me. Just like I saw John Williams conduct 7 times at the Boston Pops and Boston Symphony Orchestra, not realizing the greatness in front of me at a young age. But now I look back on it and I'm like, oh boy, wow, I got to see some cool stuff. And Johnny Most was one of those announcers who was the lifeblood of the Celtics community. I think he even took the stand when Robert Parrish, the chief, got busted for having an ounce of weed sent to him. So check this out. This is back when pot was completely illegal, and an ounce of weed was like years in prison, like actual years. And I got to give Robert Parrish a lot of credit. He looks at the judge at the end of the trial before the judgment comes out, and he says, can I say something? And he goes, look, if I don't get what's in that package, we don't win the playoffs. I can't make it an entire season with this body. And guess what? He got some community service. He got some community service out of the deal. And some PSAs, kids, don't do drugs. Well, he's seriously, kids, don't do drugs. He did some community service and it's not gone. But for years, the NBA players were proponents of marijuana, just in the fact that the way that it would help their joints and ease the subtle pains, aches, and pain you get. Because a lot of these athletes, I talked to Ricky Williams a lot, and his biggest thing was in the NFL, they just want to stab you with a needle. They just want to give you a pill. That's how they want to interact with something. He goes, say what you want about marijuana, but it's natural. It's grown from the earth. There's no two ways about it. It's grown from the earth. And he goes, God gave that to us. And you know what? God didn't put it on this planet for us not to use. And he goes, I am so much better off not taking those pills. I feel better as a person when I'm not taking the pills that they want me to take for the aches and pains and all that stuff. And shooting yourself up with cortisone. Having that be the norm is not cool. There's got to be a better way to do this. And now sports is figuring out that one of those ways is marijuana. No one's really looking at it in a bad way anymore in conjunction with sports, because a lot of athletes have just said, first of all, it helps their headspace and it helps those aches and pains from their joints. And apparently it's really good for those types of pre-arthritic injuries that these players go through. That's why you see Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He can't walk anymore. He's coaching and helping coach a WNBA team. They wheel him over and then he gets down and gets into his seat. And that's because of all of those years of being so tall and going up and down on those joints, those knees. They just can't take it. The human body isn't meant to be abused like that over as many years as he played in the NBA.
I've got a number of former NFL players that I spent time with here that I used to play judo with after they retired. We were still fairly young, and most of them are just physically a disaster.
Yeah.
Anything for pain relief that's reasonable. Hey, I got to ask you hockey. We touched the other three sports. You got a hockey announcer?
Yeah, you wouldn't know who he is. His name's John Crawford. He is the AHL announcer for the Hartford Wolfpack. And I produced hundreds of games for him. And just by virtue of things, I think he's only done one or two NHL games. And he is one of the best hockey announcers that no one knows who they are. Besides that, when Levy used to do the commentary, I used to enjoy that. Now they keep Butchergross and Levy in the halftime booth back in Bristol, but I used to love it when they actually got behind the mic, because I do commentary for USA Boxing and Fight Circus, and I'll be doing the American Blackjack Celebrity Tour as well. So I commentate a bunch of different things, as well as eSports. I've over 50 different titles. And by the way, I just want you to know, I prepare for eSports the same way I prepare for sports. It's the same. You go through the same methods that you do for anything. And that's why I'm able to, I don't have to play a game to be able to announce it. Because you think Joe Buck plays any sports? No. Joe Buck just brings energy, enthusiasm, and entertainment to every broadcast that he's a part of. And that's what you have to do to be a good broadcaster. Too many people in esports go, when I first got here, what game? You only want to be known for one game? Look, if somebody pays you a lot of money for that one game, sure. But open up your world. Get involved in as many things. Look, let them funnel you down. But if you're funneling yourself from the start, you need this, not this. You know what I'm saying? You have to allow yourself to have the best opportunity available, and then let them pigeonhole you into stuff. Look, I did play-by-play for NBA 2K for a season. So you know what? The only thing I worried about was basketball and NBA 2K that whole time. All right, so that's that. And then you move on to other things. But some people think they can only do one thing, and that's a fallacy. And if you allow yourself to believe that, then that's the only thing you're ever going to do.
So let's talk about your business right now. You are a super busy guy. You've got all sorts of things going on. Esports, you got your Saturday night, but let's go through them so people can follow you. If they come to Vegas, they see the show live. Let's go through all of that, all the different things that Logan is involved with. And once again, how they can follow you, listen to your show, etc.
Well, everything's the Logan Summit show on social media. You can go to millions.co, logan.summit, and you can check it out. Or there's links available for my media kit on all of my social media that has all of my links. Look, I'll be on Netflix with Fight Circus coming up at the end of the year. And every Saturday night, I'm over at the HyperX Arena. I'm working on a deal with the HyperX Arena to do some of my podcasts out of there. But no, you wouldn't be able to see them live unless you came into my studio. And no, don't come to my condo. Thank you. That's creepy.
That would be creepy. And that's at the Luxor, right?
Yes, it is. The HyperX Arena is inside of the Luxor. I'm there every Saturday night, and sometimes for other events. I did a Cardano event over there. Recently, I did a USA Boxing event over there. And from time to time, there's tons of different events. We just had a sneaker movie premiere in there as well. So there's always something going on at the HyperX Arena. Hey, you like Mahjong? We got that too.
Yeah, there's not much that isn't going on in Vegas, right? That is pretty.
There's always something to do.
Yeah. I talked to Chris about that, and I'm like, I gotta ask you, okay, just living in Vegas. I've never lived there, obviously, but I'm a New York guy. I grew up in New York. I've lived in London. I've lived in Tokyo. I've lived in Sydney. I've lived in all these exciting cities, but I couldn't picture living in Vegas as a sports fan because I don't think I'd ever go to sleep. How do you eventually get to that point where you go, okay, you know what, I got to turn it all off and just let it be and go back to being a normal person? How do you just turn it off eventually?
You're acting as though that Vegas is a superhuman Marvel character like Thanos that just snaps its fingers and has you at its will. Look, you're a person. You do whatever the you want. Okay, you want to go to sleep, you go to sleep. You don't want to go out one night, you don't go out one night. Look, man, you do. It's just like any other city, any other big city. And it's not even a big city. There's only 635,000 people who live here. It's small comparatively. Yeah, it's just like any other place that I've ever lived. And I've lived in London. I lived in West Kensington, London. I've been a Chelsea fan since 1997 because of that. And just like any other place that I've lived, it's up to you. Look, in Syracuse, I could stay out till 5 o'clock in the morning if I wanted to.
Yeah.
I could. I did a bunch of times. And I was doing a morning show, so I actually had to go to work at 4:20 in the morning. Staying out till 5 didn't actually work out real well for me sometimes.
I bet. But that's always the thing when I'm in Vegas. It's like I love walking into sports book. I can bet horses. I can watch all these different sports going on all over the place. Bet them if I want, or just watch them because I enjoy watching them. And I always think about that. And I'm sure like anything, you get used to it. And of course, to your point, right? You go 4 blocks from the strip, and you're in normal place. It's in a normal neighborhood.
Yes, exactly.
I had to ask Chris that all the time.
Now you just look. People can get lost in here, but the older you get, the less likely that this place could have killed me in my 20s. But as you get older, you reevaluate things and you say no. You just say no to stuff. Like tomorrow night, I've got my gig, and then there's the celebrity poker tour. I'm going to miss the actual broadcast, but I'm going to be there for the after party. So last night, when Overt Flow and my business manager, Bobby, came over, they were like, you guys want to go on tonight? I was like, no, we're going to go on tomorrow night, and then we're going to go on Saturday night. So why don't we not go on tonight? And they were like, no, come on. And I'm like, no. You just say no sometimes. And like when we have days on end where it's just convention party, I take 2 days off afterwards where I'm in bed I just try to sleep for a day and then rest for another day. And the cool thing about technology is now we can do a lot of stuff just by turning over and grabbing our phone. You can keep up and keep your finger on the pulse of your community just by literally a flick of the finger nowadays. So it is a lot easier. But yeah, as a 46-year-old guy, I get really tired sometimes. And then I take 2 days to myself and I just get back into it, get your head back on and get back going. The party never stops, but that's everywhere if you want to party. Why do you think all those people in the Midwest have issues? You think they're partying out there. They're just doing it in a different place and in a different way. You can get into trouble no matter where you live. It takes a person to be able to walk away from trouble.
Sure. Logan, this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate the time together. Do you have a last word for our audience?
Yeah, I always say, be good to yourself and be kind to others. Pay it forward, play it forward. Rock like a party star, party like a rock star. Smile strong, laugh loud. Last but not least, please follow and subscribe. I am known as the Logan Summit Show on all social media, and you will be able to find me everywhere. Trust me. I am literally everywhere. And I always end every fight interview with, and John, everybody loves a good fight.
Yes, they do. Thank you, Logan.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to check back weekly for more exciting episodes. And don't miss Ink and Insight every Wednesday, where we celebrate iconic authors and dive into their impactful works.